On episode 376 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Dr. Mariza Snyder and discuss her book, The Essential Oils Hormone Solution. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/376. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Our guest today is the author of 7 books, including the best-selling The Dash Diet Cookbook and The Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oils. For the past 9 years, she has lectured at wellness centers, hospitals, conferences, and corporations on hormone health and essential oils, nutrition, and detoxification. Today, we're going to discuss her book, The Essential Oils Hormone Solution. With no further ado, here's Dr. Mariza Snyder. Dr. Snyder, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing very well. When your publicist reached out to me, Jimmy, and he had the book Essential Oils Hormone Solution, I kind of did a little bit of a double take. I was like, essential oils and hormones. I mean, I want to have more conversations about hormones because there's such an important aspect to overall wellness. If you don't have your hormones in balance, you just aren't going to be well. But I'd never really heard anybody talking about using the essential oils protocols or anything like that to affect hormones. So I was really interested to kind of dive into this book and get a better understanding of how essential oils can be used to help manage our hormones.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to talk about that today and give some clarity around that topic.
Yeah. And the reason that this topic is so important, one to me, is, as we get into our, 50s and 60s, a lot of things are going on with our bodies. A lot of things are slowing down. For men, your testosterone's going down. For women, your progesterone and estrogen start to decline. And that has some fundamental changes in the way that our bodies function, not to mention, growth hormone, lower thyroid, and then just everything else seems to slowly be getting out of balance from what was making us feel young and vibrant. You use a term in the book, and I've heard this phraseology, maybe not exactly this way, but I want to kind of dive into this. You use the term "my body at war."
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
can you kind of peel the layers away from that a little bit? Because for someone that hasn't experienced some of this stuff, I think it's important for them to kind of understand this feeling so that they recognize it. Because I know for men, it happens really kind of slowly. So I wouldn't think of it so much as a war as just a slow, gradual melting.
A slow, gradual decline. I'd love to talk a little bit. So this is kind of what I've seen when I was in practice, what I saw in practice a lot, and then what I had personally experienced. We are hardwired for survival. That is the number one MO of the body. It's how our brain functions. It's how our metabolism is driven by, and we are, constantly we think about inside of the brain a really important aspect of the brain, probably one of the oldest parts of the brain, is the limbic brain, the limbic system. And your limbic system is driven by autonomic. It's an autonomic response. And we have 2 different ways that we respond. If you're looking at it cut and dry, it's going to be parasympathetic, which is rest and digest and reproduction. That's really where we're at when we're eating, we're reproducing, because that's the other MO, is that not only do we have to survive long enough to procreate, right? And so be an evolutionary success means that we have grandchildren. And that's just how it's defined in like biological terms. So we've got parasympathetic and then we've got sympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system, it can be in overdrive. We call it sympathetic dominance. And that is when our body is kind of at war if that system is constantly running on overdrive because it's survival. And when your body is constantly running in survival mode, that's where we kind of get in trouble. Like you can imagine, I always imagine a gazelle in Africa, and you'll see gazelles grazing inside of a pasture, just relaxing, doing them. They're in parasympathetic mode. They're just kicking it. Then someone spots a tiger, right? Someone spots a tiger lurking. Everyone gets the message, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system mode kicks on, and they start running like gazelles. And once they know that the danger's gone, well, then they go back to grazing. Problem is that we are constantly perceiving so many of our environmental stressors as tigers behind us all the time. And when that happens, your brain and that neuroplasticity, which is driving a lot of the hormonal responses, becomes in a scenario of my body at war. We are in constant sympathetic nervous system mode, and we drive important survival hormones like cortisol and epinephrine coursing through the system. Well, those have negative ramifications, digestive ramifications, reproductive ramifications, cognitive function ramifications. Things like even putting on weight in areas, kind of that belly fat that we talk about. You can create a fatty liver because you're constantly stressed. You can drive your thyroid into the ground. And so that's usually what I oftentimes see, is that I don't think we realize that when we fuel our life based on stress or the constant demands of everyone else's priorities, when we're all things to everybody else, we don't realize that fuel that we're running on is really lending towards chaos inside of the body.
Okay. And I guess I kind of understood a little bit of that beforehand, because I've gone and gotten massages, and, the masseuse likes to, will occasionally use some oils or scents or something like that, have a diffuser in there. I've used some like lavender to relax and sleep better. So I have used some essential oils. I like that your book actually has a lot of recipes, because I think that's going to make it easy for folks to kind of say, okay, here's what I can put together as a recipe to deal with various things. But before they kind of go down that line, okay, I'm fatigued. I know I'm stressed. I know this is going on in my life. But really, it's trodden to them to go get some hormones tested first to kind of know which direction to go with this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is definitely, I'm a big fan of knowing your numbers. I think that's really, really important. We can make changes and make stride even without hormones. If it is stress driven, right? We can disrupt the stress response and the resulting domino effect of that with natural solutions at your fingertips. But yes, I do recommend getting tested. If something else is going on, you want to know what's going on in the body. Absolutely, it's important. If you find that your hormone imbalances are being driven by a different root cause, like let's say it is chronic stress, you could work on your hormones and you can work on your thyroid all you like. But if you're not addressing the core root of the issue, which for some of us oftentimes can be the stress that we're dealing with on the day to day, our bodies go back to where they were. So that was what was happening to me. I was trying to treat my stress with nutrition. And I have a quote that says, you can't green smoothie your way out of chronic stress. And I thought I could for many years. Like I thought I could exercise and green smoothie my way out of, but it was my, I would call it the operating system. I was running on stress 24/7. And without changing the operating system, which is what I think oils can help to do, we find ourselves back in those patterns.
Yeah, that's a big driver to our move to Panama, is to kind of get into that lower gear lifestyle, and
Right?
kind of
Yeah,
reduce that,
lower
because
gear.
I was corporate for so many years, and the last few years with the layoffs and everything was just, it was really damaging to me, and I knew that was kind of the one last thing I needed to fix the puzzle. But for someone going in, a lot of times I know, I've gone to doctors, and
Mhm.
the doctor will say, okay, we'll do labs. And then you get the labs, and you realize as you sit there and start trying to do, I guess, a little bit of doctor Googling to say, I want to figure out what this is actually telling me. But you start doing some of that research, and it's like, well, I just got this test, but this article is saying I really should have gotten a more broad panel. Like I got TSH, but I didn't get T4, T3, and reverse T3. What would you recommend if someone was going to go in and put together a panel for hormone testing? What would you recommend that they go get?
Absolutely. So I have, and inside the book too, I do such a great job of really giving people all the testing that they should be asking for. Because as you know, we really have to become our own advocate for our own health these days, given there's a lot of different reasons why that's the case. And so what I would recommend if I were to go into my doctor, and again, maybe your traditional doctor may even say no to these, and it's really worth looking for a functional doctor, a functional medicine doctor, or a naturopath, someone who's really willing to look at everything. So what you're looking for, I mean, clearly the big ones, a complete blood panel. I think everyone should be tested for thyroid. We're seeing the thyroid is just there's so much that can go wrong there. Toxic load, stress, adrenal deregulation. The thyroid tends to be just one of those very delicate endocrine systems or endocrine glands that just takes a beating. Any autoimmune or allergy issue, the immune system is like, you know what? Let's just go after the thyroid too. Might as well just knock that one out. So I always recommend running a thyroid panel. Just thyroid stimulating hormone, free T3, free T4, reverse T3. I also want you looking at antibodies because if it's hypothyroid, 80 to 90% of the time, it's probably Hashimoto's driven, meaning the immune system is causing the problem. So TPO-AB and then the antibodies as well, the antiglobulins. So that is going to be the TPA-AB as well. Then I want you to look at the adrenals or at least look at cortisol levels. And that is throughout the day. So morning before 9 a.m., you're looking at afternoon, evening, and before going to bed. And that's that diurnal cortisol test that I'm looking at. I also like total testosterone and DHEA levels. I think those are important. Progesterone specifically on days 21 to 23, because that is when progesterone is at its height. That's when we'll really know what's going on with progesterone. I also want to look at estrogen levels as well, see where they're at. Fasting insulin, glucose, HDL, hemoglobin. I want to look at the growth factor, the growth hormone, and then also important nutrients. I want to look at vitamin D, vitamin B12, folate, ferritin, iron. Those are things that I want to be looking at as well because they do also, those nutrient depletions can have a profound impact on what's going on with those hormones. So those are the things I'm looking for in a real, like a comprehensive lab test. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of traditional doctors are not running these levels of tests.
Yeah, that's. I actually have an agreement with the lab. I'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Oh, good. Thank you.
They can go and you can get your own tests and request what you need. And men, you're not going to see progesterone, so that's fine.
You don't need a test for that.
but we do need to check for estrogen because we can get too much estrogen.
Yes,
you got moobs, and you not feeling really manly. So you do need that. And women, it's important for you to also test your testosterone because women do have some and need some to have a good solid libido. So I like that list, and that's in your book. So just getting that list makes this book a pretty valuable resource.
absolutely.
In the book, you go into the 5 pillars. Because I come from an accounting background. Whenever I see a number, I'm like immediately drawn to it. Like, oh, good, a list.
I love a list.
so you have the 5 pillars of a foundational lifestyle. Do you mind going through each of those?
Absolutely. So I have, yes, as you mentioned, 5 pillars. And this is what I've just learned in practice, learned that really kind of move the needle. I'm not going to lie, Alan. I feel like a lot of why we can get ourselves in trouble is lifestyle, and we don't realize the implications of lifestyle until we realize the implications of lifestyle. And usually we start to feel those things around 40 years old. I know very often when people were walking into my office, that was when they were like, okay, something isn't right. Things start to chip away. So number 1, and this is going to be of no surprise to anybody, is nutrition. We know that nutrition is fuel. We know that nutrition is information, and our bodies are taking in that information. So you vote for what goes on and what happens in your body, the conversations and communication that goes on in the body with every single fork. That is so important. So that's number 1. Number 2 is exercise. So moving your body. The benefits of exercise are so far reaching, but even stress, getting your body out of that world, or my world with war, or my body at war, reducing stress levels, supporting the cardiovascular system, helping to boost cognitive function. I mean, respiratory system, boosting mitochondrial function, even allowing, like, having more receptor sites on every cell for your thyroid hormones is important and driven by movement. I mean, we are seeing those implications far and wide. Number 3 is stress management. Stress comes in a lot of forms. It's perceived, it's emotional, it's chemical, it's physical. But I'm really concerned with the unrelenting perceived stress that we're dealing with every day and the repercussions that we talked about. 4 is reducing the toxic burden. Recently in the last 6 months, I've had 5 friends of mine diagnosed with breast cancer or thyroid cancer under the age of 45. 45.
Yeah.
And
we have a friend that's going through chemo right now herself, and she's not even 50. So it's
insane. That's not even, I mean, that's the kind of the worst of the spectrum of what happens when toxicity or toxic burden is high in the body. But, hormones can deregulate because of toxins, gut issues. I mean, even the thyroid, it's usually a combination of things that are happening with the thyroid, and toxins do play a major role there. So looking at reducing your toxic burden. And then number 5, which I think oftentimes is kind of just put to the wayside, is going to be self-care. How do we build in self-care every single day? How do we build in the breaks and the pauses so that we can manage the life that we're living?
And I just want to say, with something like this, these 5 pillars, this is not something where you say, well, I'm gonna fix the first pillar and I'm gonna be good. The reality is you need to be working on all of them. They all need to be a part of what your lifestyle is going forward. Anything you can do to improve those, you need to be slowly chipping away at getting that done.
Well, and the beauty of it is it really is possible to do each and every one of these things every day. It's just it's the mindset in which we live. I think about how my day started today. My day started, I was using oils. I drank my big glass of lemon water. I made a green smoothie. I went outside and ran I have a really big hill that I live in. So I even start my day just running that hill a couple of times. I journaled in my book. Lunch was a big salad with, we made this really beautiful veggie frittata and sauerkraut for gut support. I took all of my supplements, and I have little breaks built into my phone for just those moments to take a pause. And so we are hyper productive over here. Yet all of the decisions I'm making for my health or for my body are based on those 5 pillars.
Yes, and like I said, that I think you have to do that at some level, but they do snowball. That's kind of one of the cool things about this. If you're eating higher quality food, you're going to have more energy, and when you have more energy, and you're moving around. Your lymphatic system's functioning better. You're getting rid of toxins easier. When you get rid of the toxins, you're sleeping better, and as you start feeling better about yourself, the self care and the reduction of stress, those become easier. So it's a self-fulfilling, self-building kind of thing here when you are taking the time to make sure that you're focused on these.
Absolutely. And I think too, when you start to feel great and you start to feel good, you really don't want to regress back. And you'll notice when you start to not. Like, I know that, if we've taken on a big project or we're working harder than normal, like there's signs, and we're really mindful of those things. And so I'm quick to get right back on track, knowing what it feels like to not be on track. And I think sometimes we don't necessarily know what it feels like to feel really great all the time, or at least, a good chunk of the time. But I promise once you get to that place, you're going to want to sustain it because you're not going to want to feel anything different than that.
I completely agree. As people are getting into essential oils, one of the things that, because you're the second guest of like 374 episodes. This is the second episode that we've had on essential oils, and it was really just because of the compelling nature of the hormone and the essential oils, and I really want to dive into that a little bit. But before we get there, one of the things that I do know from my previous guests is that it's very important for you to focus on the quality of your essential oils. I mean, this is not just go find a scented candle from
Please
Walmart
don't do that.
and light it and sit in the bathtub. You know, there's some quality issues from some manufacturers, and you really have to know your product. Can you talk a little bit about what makes a essential oil high quality?
Absolutely. So, an essential oil, once upon a time, was a plant. And just like we're concerned about the plants that we consume, like the blueberries and the kale and the carrots, it's really important. If you want to use these for therapeutic benefits, you have to be really mindful of where these plants come from. You want plants coming from their indigenous locations. So, for instance, frankincense should come from Somalia or Oman. Cardamom should come from Guatemala or the Middle East. Melaleuca tea tree should come from Australia, France. The province of France and Bulgaria is where lavender should come from. So, it's important that there are different parts of the world that only grow these very specific plants, and anywhere else, you're losing the chemical constituents. For example, let's give an example of myrrh. Now, a high quality myrrh oil, the sequiterpene content on that needs to be above 60%. That's going to be a high quality. Well, where are we going to get myrrh with a 60% chemical constituent content of sequiterpene? That's the level of research that needs to go into these oils. Same thing with frankincense. The monoterpene content needs to be above 35%. So that's what I'm usually looking for. If they're disclosing where the plants come from, how are these plants treated? Are these local farmers? It really matters how these plants are grown. And then on top of that, after these plants are grown and harvested in a sustainable and beautiful way, and they're distilled for their benefits, how are they being tested? So then we've got testing like gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy and chirality testing, microbial testing. And, as a biochemist for many, many years before I became a practitioner, this is where I was really fascinated. So I always recommend that people do their due diligence and make sure that you just go and look them up. If you're buying from a company, you want to make sure that they are disclosing where their oils come from and they're disclosing the type of testing that they are doing on their oils.
And not just the oils, isn't there? Okay, so each oil, it just typically isn't just the oil. Isn't there typically a base oil that it's?
No, I mean,
No?
it depends. No, not normally.
Oh,
No,
okay.
and if there is a base oil in it, like let's say a fractionated coconut oil, that must be disclosed as well. When we call oils that have extra stuff in them besides the pure version of it, they're adulterated. That means they've been tainted. And now, if indeed if they say and disclose, hey, for instance, I'll give you an example. A 5 ml bottle of rose oil takes about 8,000 rose petals. Now, those roses are grown in Bulgaria most of the time. A 5 ml bottle of rose oil is about $800, give or take, $500 to $800. But there are companies that will dilute pure rose oil in fractionated coconut oil or something like that, and they have to say that. They'll have to say, hey, and that oil may only cost $75 or $100, but they've got to disclose that information. But a pure oil, unless you're dealing with a rose or a jasmine or a neroli, where it would be hundreds upon hundreds of dollars to get that bottle of oil, they should normally be just literally that essential oil, that chemical constituent.
Okay. As I was going through and I said, okay, now I want to get in and figure out how is this affecting my hormones and how are we going to use essential oils to help heal ourselves. I liked that you did this kind of walk across where you talked emotion, hormones, and essential oils. And particularly, I like the way you told your story about wild orange. The first time you used wild orange. Do you mind telling that story and then just kind of explaining from that context how all this works?
Yeah. So wild orange was one of the first oils that I met and that I fell in love with. Actually, wild orange is sitting right here next to me in this interview. We're kind of best buds. We hang out a lot. And wild orange, most citrus oils like grapefruit and lemon and lime, and although each and every one of those have different chemical constituents, for the most part, what we're looking at is a limonene content, which is in the family of monoterpenes. Now, limonene in wild orange runs about 85 to 90%. That's what we're normally looking for. And wild orange is known as the oil of abundance. But what we can demonstrate is when you breathe in the chemical constituents of wild orange, these chemical constituents have a no holds barred directly into the limbic system. Because what a lot of people don't know is that our sense of smell is hardwired to our sense of survival. So if you smell a fire, you run, or you smell gas, you run, right? You just, there's, so our sense of smell has always been tied into that wiring. So we are leveraging the power of these chemical constituents. They bind to the olfactory bulb. Then they're binding to other receptors that send messages to the limbic brain. But what we know about limonene content is that it boosts serotonin and dopamine production in a really balanced way. So it has a profound impact on our neurochemistry, specifically on those neurotransmitters. But we also know that serotonin is a hormone, so it's it's got two different properties, and we can actually shift the way the limbic brain and the limbic system is working by merely breathing in this oil. So I always say you cannot stay angry or mad breathing in wild orange. It literally shifts the chemistry in the brain to go from an angered state to a much more, I wouldn't say that you're going to be happy, but you're at least not going to be feeling super, super angry. You're going to feel more neutral after breathing in this oil.
Okay, and as I said, I've had exposure to lavender oil as primarily to sleep. Put it on your, it'll help you sleep, kind of thing. Can you kind of talk through how some of these oils work and what are, because you're throwing a lot of the terms out there, that are, I know as a biochemist, you love.
I can break it down to simpler terms. So let's give lavender a go. So I will say, because I think what it is that, Alan, I want people to understand is that a lot of people are like, oh, it's woo woo. And, if you have good intention and it's kind of calming, but I don't know what it is. The cool thing about it is there's just a lot of science that backs all this up. And as you saw in my book, I have 40 pages of bibliography.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say at the end is, the bibliography's there. So there's studies after studies that you can just go down that rabbit hole and spend a long, long time reading about how they've proven a lot of good qualities from these oils.
Right. Well, and what's so cool is that, Europe's a little bit more ahead of us than we like in terms of holistic medicine. And lavender is one of the number one recommended solutions for anxiety in a lot of Europe. They take it orally in a little capsule. And oftentimes naturopaths and functional practitioners here in the States will also literally, it's in a prescription form. They're these little teeny capsules like you would get in a prescription, and people take them for lowering anxiety levels. And it's because we know that there are properties in lavender that will calm down an overactive limbic brain when we're having that anxiety or we're feeling really overwhelmed. And so really in the nutshell, lavender is all things calming. It's designed to calm the brain. It's designed to shut off the mental chatter. It's even calming for a mosquito bite. It's great for a sunburn. Now, a really minor sunburn, right? But lavender is just very soothing to the body. But lavender is very deceptive. It's a deceptive woman, a deceptive flower. She is very powerful. She's very potent. Sometimes she knocks people on their butts. So I always tell people to be really mindful. I love the potency of oils, but every oil is going to be a little bit different from you. Some people, lavender is the bee's knees. Other times, lavender may be a little much. You may want to soften it up with Roman chamomile or cedarwood, something that lavender is very complementary to. But yes, ultimately, lavender is designed to shut down those worries and those anxiousnesses and that mental chatter that could be happening when you're trying to get a good night's sleep.
Okay. And then there's lots of others because you had multiple recipes. Can you just go through a few more to kind of give us some ideas? And particularly those ones that are directly related to hormones and health.
Absolutely. So we're talking about stress levels. My go-to stress blend is just I call it a Stress Be Gone blend. It's a combination of two oils because I'm going to keep it simple on the podcast. Some of my recipes get a little bit more complex, but I love simplicity. And so it's just a drop of lavender, a drop of bergamot. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, just by rubbing those two blends together, those two oils together, rubbing your palms together and taking some deep belly breaths, you're going to reset that system. You're going to disrupt the stress response. Another blend that I talk a lot about. People are concerned about brain fog and cognitive function, working memory, and alertness. So rosemary has been researched over and over and over again for boosting working memory by 75% by simply breathing it in. So I love a combination of wild orange, peppermint, rosemary, and frankincense. And it would just be, you could do a drop of each, or you could do it in a roller. And it would be, because I don't have the exact blend in front of me, it would be, let's say, 8 drops of each of those oils: frankincense, wild orange, peppermint, and rosemary. And that is what I call the get it done blend, or the cognitive boosting blend. So if anyone's struggling with just things aren't firing 100%, you're not feeling like you're on top of your game, you just breathe that blend in, and it's profoundly incredible for that. Now, for hormones, my go-to hormone oil for regulating testosterone and estrogen is going to be clary sage. Clary sage, lots of research there because it helps to bind to receptor sites in the adrenals and beta cells. It helps to get rid of xenoestrogens and false estrogens inside of the system by cleaning up receptor sites. And so I have a hormone blend that is a combination. It's called my hormone synergy blend. So I'm just going to pull it up for you guys right now. And that is in a 10 ml roller, 10 drops of clary sage, 8 drops of lavender, 8 drops of geranium, because also geranium's great at helping the liver detoxify excess hormone metabolites. 4 drops of bergamot and 4 drops of ylang-ylang. Ylang-ylang is the ultimate libido booster. It has profound benefits on testosterone. So I really do love this blend because it does tackle a lot of the hormone systems that we're looking at in the reproductive system.
Cool. And the book even goes into how to make your own roller. I mean, so
Yeah.
you got this is a great resource for someone that wants to learn more about essential oils and actually get into using them. I guess I'll go ahead and close out with my last question. I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
Oh, I love it. So the first tactic I think is a must, is you've got to have a morning ritual. A morning ritual, set the tone for your day. Set the tone for your day. It could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, where you are on your own agenda and not somebody else's agenda. Strategy number 2, use your oils for those emergency moments. You need more energy, grab an oil. You need to get rid of that. You need to win that stare down with that cupcake or that stale donut. Get peppermint out, right? It's a powerful craving suppressant. And then number 3 is also have a wind down routine. It is so important to rest and shut down the brain, get good, decent sleep. The reason why so many of us are just slogging through the day like zombies is we're not getting enough sleep. We're working overtime, or we're choosing that last episode on Netflix. And I just, when you set an intention for an evening routine, using calming oils or reading a book before bed, shutting off the computer at 9 p.m., you will recharge and you will have that missing energy will come back for you.
Cool. I like those. So, Dr. Snyder, if someone wanted to learn more about you and what you're doing, or the book, the Essential Oils Hormone Solution, where would you like for me to send them?
I would love for you guys, I would love to send them. So I have, and I think you have the link for this, I have an amazing cravings, fatigue, and stress cheat sheet that will make sure we get the link for you. And you guys can go and check out, I do have a podcast myself. It's called the Essentially You Podcast, and it's all about helping you to become the CEO of your health. But the cheat sheet it has, I spotted off a lot of recipes, and I know there's a lot of recipes in the book, but sometimes just having that little cheat sheet to kind of address those core issues that I see so often is kind of a step in the right direction. So I can definitely get that for the listeners so that you guys have that to start just making some amazing progress.
Okay, cool. Well, this is episode 374. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/374, and I'll be sure to have that link there. So Dr. Snyder, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Are you stuck with your health and fitness journey and just need a little push? Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/consult, and that will take you to a link on my calendar where you can schedule a free 15-minute session with me. We can discuss your goals, we can talk about what you want to accomplish, how you can accomplish it, and a lot more. So if you need a little push, maybe a little bit of accountability, please go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/consult for your free consultation today. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Ashley Boudet and discuss her book, The Ultimate Age-Defying Plan. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.